Okay, my name's Alan Harper. I am a senior buyer for part of the company here. I joined the company in May 1986, a long time ago. I started when the company was a little bit different to the way it is now. It was just one company in those days, Atlas Copco Great Britain Limited, and I joined as a non-core purchaser for one of the divisions within that company, and that was the materials division, working for a guy by the name of Brian Wood. To tell you or to explain what it was like in those days, there were 7 of us in the department, and we had one PC between the 7 of us, so we used to take turns in using it. Another big difference from those times is the whole way that we used to be within the office. Used to smoke quite openly in the office. Some days you'd walk through the office and cut the air with a knife. A little bit different to these days. From that time, from when I started there, there were a lot of changes within the company, and throughout that time I remained in purchasing. The company evolved and became the 4 companies that we're aware of now, to have a greater focus on the product that they were trying to sell for, exactly as you say, for customer satisfaction, I would imagine. And I worked for one of them, still being in purchasing, not only for that company but for the other companies on site here. When I first started with the company, I was employed as a non-core purchaser. To describe what that is, that's products that are non-core or indirect are ones that are consumed by the company. The cost of the products that are purchased are not passed on to the customer, they are consumed. So it's things like stationery, office equipment, IT, mobile phones, etc., that kind of thing. And that's really what I've remained with throughout my time here in one way or another. Going back a few years, there was the powers that be decided to create a new entity. That was Atlas Copco ASAP, which was Advanced Service Administration Provider. And this was really a company that was created to deal with the back office side of the business. It was felt that things like purchasing, finance, IT, that kind of thing would be better off serviced by a company which is dedicated for that, to leave the customer centres to concentrate on what they were there for, and that's selling to the customers. So I can't remember the exact date that that company came into being, but I was brought into that, and when that happened, I then had a boss that was based in Belgium, and there were a number of people like me in different Atlas Copcos around the world doing my kind of job, but in their different countries. And we all reported to a guy in Belgium. And throughout that time, my job evolved into something totally different, and I was not necessarily involved with purchasing up front, so to speak, but I was more involved with sourcing solutions and different e-sourcing platforms. And that gave me the opportunity to travel to quite a number of countries at that time. And America and all around Europe, actually training different purchasers on this particular system. So I've found that Atlas Copco gave me the ability, or the adventure, I suppose, to do that, which is, I thought was pretty good. A lot of what I did then could possibly be done now on conference calls and telecoms and things like that, but at the time it was quite an adventure, moving around and meeting all these different people. Then ASAP evolved and became something called Atlas Copco Business Services, more or less doing exactly the same function. And then that was up to around about 4 years ago, where Business Services was disbanded, and the people that were working for that company were actually absorbed back into the Atlas Copco companies, or the customer centres here at Hemel. So for myself, I'm now hosted by Atlas Copco Hemel Systems, but indeed I still do purchase for all the other companies on site. That's my feeling, is that as far as the culture of the company is concerned, always looking to see how employees can progress with whatever they want to do. There's always opportunities for them. That's what I found anyway. Whether it be for long-standing employees, or even the quite recent innovation of year in industry students, getting these people from universities for a year or so, and actually showing them how companies work, or the big bad outside world. And I think that's a really good thing. I think the way things are, that things change and so they remain the same. I think to work for Atlas Copco, there is a certain kind of mindset that you people seem to take on, and you either enjoy that and embrace it, and it's often called the Atlas Copco way, or you don't, and you decide to move to pastures new. But as far as what I can say about how the company has treated me, or how I can see them treating other people that have worked for the company for some time, things are transparent. There's no blame culture here at all. We work as a team, and that's always been the way, I think, since when I first started with the company all those years ago to now. Things haven't really changed with the way, or the philosophy of the company has remained the same, albeit the times have changed. Yeah, I remember in the first company I worked for, it was what would seem to be very old-fashioned these days, but yeah, we had a lot of women sitting in a typing pool, just typing away, and the blokes would be all sitting talking about football all day. Those days have gone, and I didn't found that to be the case when I joined Atlas Copco. I think as far as equality is concerned, I think Atlas Copco were probably the forerunners with that, as far as I can see. Offices were just starting to look at open plan offices. When I first joined, there were a lot of smaller offices where the management used to squirrel themselves away, and perhaps you wouldn't see them from one day to the next. But they were just starting to expand to open plan offices, and knocking walls down, and making it easier for people to actually talk and see each other. And now we've got activity-based working, which is a whole lifetime away from what we did before, where we have definite areas where people can go depending on what they're doing. They can put themselves in a meeting room, if they have some work that they want to do, sort of quiet time, or they can sit where they like. Yeah, I think it's a good thing that the management mucks in, for want of a better phrase, with their colleagues. They are looked on, as I said before, as more of a colleague and less of a manager as such. It's a lot more freer, and I think it works extremely well. So it's a whole different thing to what it was in the olden days. When I first joined the company, the resources were very different to what we've got now. Talking from a purchasing perspective, whereas now we've got internet, we've got e-sourcing platforms, we've got all different tools and tricks and things that we can play with to actually get prices and so on from vendors and what have you. But in those days, you had the desk telephone, you had the letter. That I don't think anybody writes letters these days, but in those days, yes, we had a secretary who used to write all of our letters to ask for tenders and so on, that we used to send out and have to wait for a few days for those tenders to arrive. Whereas now with emails, we get those responses almost immediately. So yeah, that's the digital age. As far as mobile phones are concerned, for instance. Whilst I was here, the way that technology has evolved with the mobile phone, from being a brick with an antenna about 6 foot long to now getting to the smallest phone that you can think of, that used to sit in the palm of your hand, to now going in the opposite direction, to having sort of mini tablets in your pocket. But indeed, that's the way forward. They're looking for mobility, and as far as I can see, Atlas Copco are the forerunners of that, and will allow for the people that need that sort of equipment to have it as soon as it becomes available. To give you some perspective, I mean, when I first started with the company, I used to buy stationary office supplies, that sort of thing, and in those days, every office had a typewriter with somebody who was either a secretary or an assistant or whatever used to use that typewriter. So obviously I used to buy a lot of paper for letterheads. I used to buy ribbons and carbon paper, all this kind of stuff that people, I suppose, now wouldn't even know what they were if they saw it. So that evolved from the humble typewriter, and it went through to something that was called a word processor, which was a step up the ladder from a typewriter, I suppose. But it was the forerunner of the PCs that we use now. But really, it was just a glorified typewriter, and it used to print on a big printer that used to sit by the side of the desk. And then we went on to the PCs that we know today. So I've seen the evolution right from the beginning, from the humble typewriter, not quite from the chalkboard and chalk, right all the way through to the PC that we use today. When I first joined the company, the word environment didn't really mean anything, but obviously as time's gone by, it's become more and more important, and I think that will evolve even more so with the advent of the electric car and solar powered equipment and so on and so forth. We've got to look after the world we live in, and that is now becoming a focus, or it has been a focus for the company for a while, but even more so as we move forward.